Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today we're jumping straight into the editorial section. First up, a piece by G. Rajagopalan, Citizenship Verification in India's Electoral Rolls. And what's really striking is his point about seasoned politicians objecting to the Election Commission checking citizenship for voter rolls in Bihar. It seems, well, fundamental, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. I mean, the Constitution is built on this. Being an elector, being able to vote, or even stand for election, it hinges on being an Indian citizen. That's the bedrock.
Right.
You've got Article 324 giving the ECI, the Election Commission, the power, the superintendents over elections and preparing the rolls. And then Article 326 nails it down. Adult suffrage? Yes, but you must be an Indian citizen, 18 or older. And this roll preparation, it's not a one-off thing. It's, continuous.
Okay, so the Constitution sets the stage.
Right.
But there's also specific law involved, right? The Representation of the People Act, 1950. How does that flesh things out?
Exactly. That act gives the operational details. Part IB and Part 3 deal specifically with electoral rolls for Parliament and Assembly constituencies. Section 16 is crystal clear. Section 16(1)(a) says if you're not a citizen, you're disqualified from being on the roll.
Disqualified. Full stop.
Full stop. And Section 16(2) says if someone who isn't a citizen is on the roll, their name has to be struck off. There are other sections, too, like Section 20 about being ordinarily resident, Section 21 on preparation and revision, Section 22 on corrections, Section 23 on including names, but the non-citizen part is non-negotiable.
So the ECI isn't just allowed to check citizenship, it has to.
Precisely. They have no jurisdiction, zero authority to include a non-citizen. If there's a complaint or even just a doubt about someone's citizenship status, the ECI is legally bound to inquire. They must verify and ensure only citizens are registered.
And this obviously extends to people actually holding office, right? Legislators.
Oh, absolutely. Articles 102, 1D, and 191 of the Constitution disqualify anyone who isn't a citizen from being an MP or an MLA. The idea that a non-citizen could be a legislator is, well, absurd under our system. You need to prove citizenship under the Citizenship Act 1955. And it even specifically excludes overseas citizen of India cardholders from voting rights. That's Section 7B2.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for a lot of people, I think. The Aadhaar card. It's everywhere. Does having one prove you're a citizen for voting purposes?
That's a common misconception, but the article tackles it head-on. The Aadhaar Act itself, Section 9, states very clearly, getting an Aadhaar number or using it for authentication does not confer any right of citizenship or domicile.
Not proof of citizenship.
Okay, not at all. Section 3 of the Act says any resident can get an Aadhaar number. Resident, not citizen. That's the key distinction. So, flashing an Aadhaar card doesn't meet the constitutional requirement for voting. Keeping foreigners on the electoral rolls makes those rolls void ab initio, invalid from the start. The political objections mentioned, they really suggest, as the author implies, a lack of understanding of how fundamental this is.
From democratic foundations to global strategy now, let's pivot to the next editorial piece. Russia's Embrace of the Taliban, a strategic shift by Harsh V. Pant at ORF. This is about Russia recognizing the Taliban's Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan on July 3, 2025, and even accrediting their ambassador. That's a huge turnaround, isn't it?
It's a massive reversal, really. If you look back, Russia was openly hostile to the Taliban between 1996 and 2001. They didn't recognize their government then, even pulled back diplomatically.
Right, I remember that period.
And the Taliban recognized the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria back in 2000, which was a direct challenge to Moscow. Then Russia formally labeled the Taliban a terrorist organization in 2003. After 9/11, they even helped the U.S. with logistics in Afghanistan. So yeah, going from that to full recognition and an ambassador, it's quite the strategic pivot.
So what drove this change? It wasn't overnight, clearly.
No, definitely not. It started subtly, maybe early 2010s. Unofficial contacts, often facilitated through Pakistan. The main driver seems to be hard-nosed security interests.
Like what specifically?
Primarily, the safety of Russian citizens in the region, combating ISK, the Islamic State Khorasan province, which is a threat to Russia too, and of course the massive issue of drug trafficking originating from Afghanistan. Russia also started trying to position itself as a key player in resolving the Afghan conflict, inviting Taliban reps to talks in Moscow, even while they were still UN blacklisted. It points to a long game based on pragmatic concerns.
What's fascinating here is what happened after the Taliban took over Kabul in 2021. Most countries closed their embassies. Russia didn't. Why?
Their assessment, it seems, was that the Taliban were the objective reality. They were the only group actually in control, like it or not. So pragmatically, they decided to keep the embassy open, to keep lines of communication going.
And this led to seeing them as potential partners against terrorism.
Increasingly so. The thinking evolved towards viewing the Taliban as potential, maybe reluctant, allies specifically against ISK. This view solidified, leading to the suspension of the Taliban's ban in Russia in April 2025, though importantly, they're still on the federal terrorist list. It's a nuanced position. You have to remember the attacks Russia has faced, blamed on ISK, like the one on their Kabul embassy in 22 and the horrific Crocus City Hall attack in March 24. Stability under the Taliban perhaps seemed better than the chaos that could allow ISK to flourish.
So this recognition, it feels more symbolic than immediately practical for Russia. But does it open the door for others? Central Asia, maybe China?
The article suggests exactly that. It is largely symbolic. For now, yes, no huge immediate gains. But it could signal to other regional players, especially Central Asian states and maybe China, that it's okay to normalize relations. That would definitely boost the Taliban's international standing.
And what about the bigger picture implications? Russia seems to be overlooking things like inclusivity, women's rights.
That's a key point. Russia is essentially giving the Taliban a free pass on those issues. It sets a precedent, potentially a new regional template where pragmatic security and economic interests override concerns about governance or human rights when dealing with the Taliban.
And India's position in all this.
The assessment is that India is unlikely to be drastically infected. Delhi's already been pursuing its own path, incremental diplomatic engagement, trade, humanitarian aid, finding common ground on counterterrorism concerns, especially regarding Kashmir. India will likely continue this cautious engagement without formal recognition, prioritizing its own direct interests.
Okay, let's shift focus again, this time to healthcare innovation, something affecting everyone. We're moving to the opinion section with Dr. Abdul Ghafoor's piece, Doctors as Innovators, Shaping Healthcare's Future. He argues that doctors, despite being central to healthcare, are often sidelined when it comes to actual innovation, AI, digital health, etc. It's mostly tech folks driving it.
Yes, and Dr. Ghafoor makes a powerful case that this needs to change. Doctors must be innovators. Think about it, who understands patient needs better? Who sees the systemic problems, the workflow issues, the resource constraints firsthand?
They're right there on the front lines.
Exactly. Their deep clinical understanding puts them in the perfect position to identify real problems and create solutions that are actually clinically useful, not just technologically clever. They know what will work in a real hospital or clinic setting. They can bridge that gap between tech potential and practical application.
So if they're ideally placed, what's stopping them? The article mentions quite a few hurdles.
There are several. First, just the sheer demand of medical practice. It's incredibly time-consuming. Second, medicine is inherently risk-averse. Patient safety comes first, which can clash with the uncertainty and potential failure involved in innovation.
That makes sense. Innovation often involves trial and error.
Right. Plus, doctors often lack formal training in things like business management, finance, product development. Medical school focuses on clinical skills. And there's a cultural perception, perhaps, that innovation is for engineers or entrepreneurs, not clinicians. The article distinguishes between, say, starting a new clinic, which is entrepreneurial but delivers a known service, and true innovation, like developing a novel treatment, a new medical device, or a transformative digital health platform.
So how do we encourage doctors to take that leap into true innovation? What's the path forward?
It needs a multi-pronged approach. Medical colleges need to step up, introduce courses on entrepreneurship, biodesign, digital health, get students thinking this way early on.
To build it into the training.
Definitely. And foster collaboration between medical and engineering schools. Create spaces like innovation hubs and incubators specifically for healthcare. Imagine internships in biotech startups becoming part of medical training. That kind of exposure would be invaluable.
Are there already systems in India supporting this kind of medtech entrepreneurship?
Yes, thankfully there are. The government has initiatives like BIRAC, Startup India, the Adult Innovation Mission offering funding, grants, infrastructure. There are specialized incubators like CCAMP in Bangalore, Venture Center in Pune, Bangalore Bio Innovation Center providing mentorship, labs, funding access.
That sounds promising.
It is. Plus, the Make in India initiative helps with local manufacturing. Academic institutions are increasingly collaborating, and you have specific funds like the India Health Fund focusing on critical areas like infectious diseases. So the ecosystem is developing.
So fundamentally, it's about changing the mindset. Doctors seeing themselves not just as caregivers, but as problem solvers.
Exactly that. It's a cultural shift. Practically, things like short-term courses on commercialization for practicing doctors can help. Hospitals can create innovation-friendly policies, maybe dedicated internal funds. Organizing events for doctors to pitch ideas is also key. And, crucially, we need to remove the stigma around failure in medical entrepreneurship. It's not like clinical failure, it's a learning process. The white coat needs to signify innovation leadership, too.
Fascinating. Let's move from future innovation to how we understand the past. Over to the news section, an interview with Michelle Danino about the new NCERT Middle School Social Science textbooks. Title: Crafting India's New History, Debates and Directions. History textbooks are always contentious, aren't they?
They certainly stir debate. Danino, who's heading the group for these textbooks, mentioned the main goals were, 1, reduce the sheer volume of information students have to memorize, and 2, try to make social science, well, less disliked.
Okay, and what about the big talking points, like the portrayal of the Mughals in the Sultanate?
He clarified it's just 1 chapter out of 7. The approach was to acknowledge the period involved both brutality and tolerance. He said the violence is documented in primary sources, like the Baburnama, but they try to be moderate, show complexity, and avoid overly graphic details unsuitable for that age group. The aim wasn't to focus solely on conflict, but to present a balanced picture.
The textbooks also include a note right at the start called History's Darker Periods. What's the thinking behind that? Seems quite direct.
It's intended as a heads-up, preparing students for unpleasant realities. They'll encounter invasions, conflicts from medieval times, but also the immense suffering during the colonial era, like famines, the economic drain under the British. The purpose, Danino stressed, isn't to create bitterness or revenge.
Well, to learn lessons.
Exactly. To face history honestly, understand the past, and hopefully avoid repeating mistakes. He used the analogy of Germany confronting its WWII past as a way to heal and move forward. It's about historical clarity, understanding motivation, even unpleasant ones.
Speaking of the British era, the interview mentions the drain of wealth and a lack of full acknowledgement from Britain about colonial suffering.
Yes, the point made was that while reparations are complex, there's a feeling Britain hasn't fully acknowledged the scale of the abuse, atrocities, and economic exploitation. It's not about blaming people today, but achieving historical lucidity, understanding why things happened, and the devastating impact, like the deliberate ruin of India's native industries by colonial policies, something often overlooked.
Another point of debate: the focus on the Marathas and Shivaji, potentially at the expense of figures like Tipu Sultan or Hyder Ali. What's the justification there?
Danino explained it partly comes down to space and context for middle school. Not every figure can be covered in depth at this stage. Some might appear later. The emphasis on the Marathas stems from their significance. They built a vast empire, effectively checked Mughal expansion southwards for decades. Aurangzeb spent 25 years trying to subdue them in the Deccan.
And that provocative line in the textbook.
Ah, yes, the line suggesting maybe the British conquered India more from the Marathas than from the Mughals. It's meant to highlight the Marathas' power and influence just before the British consolidation.
What about the portrayal of women? Choosing someone like Hazrat Mahal over more famous names like Razia Sultan.
According to Danino, it wasn't a rigid choice but emerged from the narrative. The goal was to include lesser-known but strong female figures alongside the famous ones, showcasing a broader range of impactful women like Queen Tara Devi, Durgavati, Ahilyabai Holkar. He indicated others might feature in later grades.
Okay, the inevitable question. What about accusations of political influence, maybe right-wing ideology, shaping these books?
Danino was very firm on this. He stated unequivocally zero political pressure from the government or any other political or ideological group. He insisted the team worked freely within the NEP 2020 and National Curriculum Framework guidelines, dismissing such claims as people just looking for a controversy.
All right, let's shift scale dramatically now from national history to the molecular level. We're heading to the science section. Microscope films molecular motion at unprecedented speeds. This piece by Unnati Ashar discusses a new Caltech imaging technique, touching on work going back to Einstein.
That's right. Einstein explained Brownian motion over a century ago, that random jiggling of small particles in a liquid or gas, bumped around by even smaller, invisible molecules. But actually seeing those molecules, which are incredibly tiny, maybe tens of angstroms across, well, that's been the challenge. Conventional microscopes have limits. They can be invasive, can't see that small, limited view.
So what's the breakthrough here? How did the Caltech team manage it?
It's quite ingenious. They aren't directly seeing the molecules in the way you'd imagine with a traditional microscope. Instead, they detect them indirectly by looking at how the molecules interact with light, cleverly using Brownian motion itself as part of the measurement.
Okay, how does that work?
It hinges on a simple principle. Bigger things move slower under Brownian motion. So they measure how quickly a molecule affects the properties of light passing through it. Small molecules jitter faster and scramble the light more rapidly. Bigger molecules are slower, the light stays more aligned. By measuring that speed of light scrambling, they can figure out the molecule size down to that tens of angstroms scale. One of the researchers called it a surreal experience.
And this builds on earlier work.
Yes, it's in the lineage of pioneers like Ahmed Zewail, the Nobel laureate, who developed ways to see chemical reactions happen at incredibly short timescales, femtoseconds. This new technique pushes the boundaries of speed and resolution even further.
Speaking of speed, this new microscope is incredibly fast, right? And non-intrusive.
Astonishing fast. It captures the whole scene in one go, a single shot. Unlike older scanning methods, we're talking speeds of hundreds of billions of frames per second. It lets them watch molecular interactions basically in ultra-slow motion. And yes, it's non-intrusive, which is crucial for studying delicate biological samples. They're calling it the world's fastest single-shot microscope, with a wide field of view.
How does the tech actually capture this? It sounds incredibly complex.
It involves several components. They use ultra-short laser pulses. The light interacts with the sample, then hits a special chip called a digital micromirror device, or DMD, which shapes the light based on software instructions. Then it goes into something called a streak tube. This converts the light photons into electrons and spreads them out based on arrival time, creating a streak pattern. Analyzing this pattern reveals the light pulse duration, and from that, the molecule's size. It's like reconstructing a jigsaw puzzle from just a few key pieces, as one researcher put it.
And they tested this. Found anything surprising?
They tested it successfully with known molecules like fluoresceindextrin. But the really interesting bit, the surprise, was that it worked well even in gases, even in turbulent environments like flames. They could observe black carbon nanoparticles in a flame, which wasn't initially expected to work so well.
Wow, so potential applications beyond biology.
Huge potential, observing processes in combustion, atmospheric science, material science, alongside the obvious biomedical applications like disease detection and drug development. It's a powerful new window onto the nanoscale world.
From the incredibly small to the immensely powerful forces of nature. Let's move to the text section, starting with India's Battle Against Glacial Lake Floods by Safi Ahsan Rizvi from the NDMA. This focuses on glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs.
Yes, and it kicks off with a very recent, very damaging example from July 8th in Nepal. A GLOF originating from a lake in Tibet caused flash floods, took out a major bridge, damaged several hydropower plants, a huge blow to Nepal's power grid.
And it highlights a cross-border issue.
Critically, yes. The lack of early warning from the Chinese side, despite the lake being in Tibet, is a major concern, especially with the number of these superglacial lakes reportedly increasing there. Nepal itself has faced major GLOFs before Suvarnamukho, Digisho, Tamapukhari, and has actually done successful mitigation work on some lakes like Imjetsho, drawing down water levels.
Okay, let's unpack this for India. What's the scale of the GLOF risk here?
It's significant. The Indian Himalayas have around 28,000 glacial lakes, with about 7,500 within India, mostly very high up, above 4,500 meters. There are two main types: superglacial, forming on the ice surface, very sensitive to melting, and moraine-dammed, where meltwater gets trapped behind loose debris dams left by glaciers. These dams can be unstable.
And what triggers these outburst floods?
Several things. Ice avalanches crashing into the lake, landslides, just the sheer pressure of meltwater building up, or even earthquakes shaking the unstable moraine dams. And with recent years being the hottest on record, glacial melt is accelerating, increasing the risk in vulnerable areas.
Monitoring thousands of remote, high-altitude lakes must be incredibly difficult.
Immensely difficult. They're hard to reach. There's a lack of weather stations up there, so getting real-time data is tough. Remote sensing can track lake area growth, but often that's after the fact, not useful for immediate warning. And the impact downstream can be devastating homes, infrastructure like bridges, vital hydropower projects. We saw this with the South Lonak GLOF in Sikkim in 2023, which destroyed the Chungthang Dam, and the Chorbari GLOF linked to the 2013 Kedarnath disaster.
So given this huge threat, what is India actually doing to reduce the risk?
The NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority, has shifted towards proactive risk reduction. They've set up a committee, the CoinDCX, bringing together scientists, state governments, and agencies. There's a national program underway, initially targeting 56 high-risk lakes, now expanded to 195, with plans to scale up further.
What does this program involve? What are the objectives?
It's a 5-point plan. First, assess the hazard properly for each lake. Second, install automated weather and water monitoring stations. Third, set up early warning systems for downstream communities. Fourth, actual mitigation, maybe siphoning water to lower lake levels or building retaining structures. And fifth, community engagement and preparedness. They're also pushing for Indian tech solutions, like using SAR interferometry from satellites to detect ground movement and trying to foster more tech innovation in this space.
And are these efforts actually happening on the ground? Are systems being deployed?
Yes, progress is being made. Multi-agency teams have been conducting expeditions in several Himalayan states, doing bathymetry to measure lake depth, using geophysics like EORT to study the moraine dams, using drones for surveys. Importantly, monitoring stations are already up and running at key lakes in Sikkim, sending back data frequently. And where automated systems aren't feasible yet, ITBP personnel stationed nearby are trained to provide manual warnings. It's a vital ongoing effort.
Okay, one final piece from the text section, bringing us into the digital realm. CoinDCX Security Breach and Crypto Investor Lessons by Sahana Venugopal. This is about a recent incident involving a major Indian crypto exchange.
That's right. CoinDCX reported on July 19th about a sophisticated server breach. Importantly, they stressed it affected an internal operational account used for providing liquidity on another platform, not customer wallets directly. The exposure was around $44 million.
And customer funds were safe.
That's what CoinDCX asserted strongly. They said customer funds are held in segregated, offline, cold wallets. And crucially, the company stated they would cover the loss from their own reserves, so customers wouldn't bear the financial hit. They reported it to CERT-In, the cyber agency, and even offered a bounty for recovering the funds.
What's fascinating here is comparing this to other hacks. How did the user experience differ, say, from the WazirX incident last year?
It's a key contrast. With CoinDCX, some users reported withdrawal delays initially, but the company blamed high volume and said all were processed. With WazirX, in July 2024, it was a much larger loss, $230 million, and it directly impacted customer funds, leading to freezes. That situation was also tangled up with ownership disputes and legal issues.
So the direct impact on users was very different.
Very different. Although both faced criticism for how quickly they communicated the details, CoinDCX argued they needed accurate information first. But the bottom line for users, whether their own money was immediately at risk, was significantly different in these two cases.
So pulling back, what's the main lesson here for crypto investors in India, especially since the market is largely unregulated?
The core takeaway, really, is that because it's unregulated, even if you use an FIU-registered exchange like CoinDCX, you can't expect much help from authorities if things go wrong. The advice from security experts like Satnam Narang from Tenable, cited in the article, is stark. Seriously consider self-custody.
Meaning taking your coins off the exchange.
Exactly. Using offline, hardware cold wallets that you control directly, but you need to be careful, do your homework, and buy these devices only from legitimate sources.
What about common threats investors face and precautions if they do keep coins on an exchange?
Narang mentions typical risks, flaws in smart contracts, phishing or social engineering attacks, stealing login credentials, even targeting third-party services connected to the exchange. And predictably, attacks often spike when crypto prices rise. His advice for exchange users is fundamental security hygiene. Use multi-factor authentication always, have strong, unique passwords, and ideally don't keep all your assets on the exchange. Move significant amounts offline if possible. It really comes down to that crypto mantra, not your keys, not your crypto. If your coins are on an exchange, you're trusting them. They control the private keys, they could freeze your account, or a hack could mean your funds are gone. It underlines the need for caution and understanding the risks involved in this space.
As we wrap up this deep dive into today's sources, it's striking how interconnected, seemingly disparate topics can be. From the foundational laws governing a nation's democracy and the complex geopolitical chess game playing out with global powers, to the very fabric of how we understand the smallest particles of our universe, and even the safety of our digital assets, it all underlines the constant interplay between established systems, rapid innovation, and the ever-present need for adaptability and informed decision-making in a world that never stands still.
Indeed. And what stands out to me is how often knowledge, whether it's understanding historical narratives, anticipating natural disasters, or navigating financial technologies, truly empowers us. It invites you to consider, how might a deeper understanding of these complex systems not just inform your own choices, but also shape the future we collectively build?
Thank you for listening. If today's episode gave you something useful, consider following us on Spotify so you're the first to hear the next one. You can give suggestions by contacting on Twitter handle given in the episode description. We are always eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.